if that bothers you or doesn't, or you don't care. Okay, so two of the things we're going to talk about is a discovery of a bunch of bones that they put together and they called Lucy. And then there's a Piltdown man, and it was said that both of these were evidences of humans that were in an evolutionary stage of walking upright. You know, apes walk on four legs, which we will call quadrupedal. Pod meaning, or pedal in this one. Ped meaning foot, quad meaning four, or bipedal. Bi meaning two, pedal meaning foot. So one of the transitions that evolutionists will point to is that apes became, at some point, we became bipedal, walking upright. So we're going to look at some of those things. My clicker not working. I'll click it here. Okay. All right. So on November 24th, 1974, which that wasn't like, you think of 74, that wasn't, it's not like this was in the 1800s or the 1700s. This was fairly in our recent history. This guy named Donald Johanson and another guy named Tom Gray, they found human-looking remains in Ethiopia. So they dug up these remains and they presented their discoveries as an ape that evolved to the point of walking upright. So they assemble these bones. There's a picture of how they assembled them. And the creature, whatever it was called Lucy. If you go into museums now, you will probably see a Lucy exhibit. So just to explain, there's an animal classification called hominids. One of the characteristics of a hominid is that you have the ability to upright. So secular scientists place humans into that category. So we're not our own category. We're Homo sapiens who are also hominids. This explains, again, a hominid. So it's a group of all modern and extinct great apes. So when they say a modern ape, they're referring to a human. So modern humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, plus all their ancestors. So they're supposing that everything came from, all animals came from these great apes. So it's interesting to hear humans called modern apes. Okay, so it was asserted that this discovery was the missing link between the great apes and the humans. So, you know, in the evolutionary study, there's this gap in the fossil records that can't really be explained. We know how it's explained, but it can't really be explained by evolutionists. So they call it the missing link. Like, how do you get from this to this? So they thought that Lucy was explain that. Like, well, here is an ape that is in that process that would fill that link of time, that would explain how apes came down from trees and became bipedal. So they thought that Lucy explained that, or was a demonstration of that. So in the 70s, when this was discovered, it was a big deal. I mean, people covered it in the news. He wrote a book about it. So you can imagine this guy, and in the scientific world, he was really, he was rocking it. He was pretty famous. He made a lot of money from this discovery. But then, you know, so the world got really excited about it. Here's an explanation of how we jump through that missing link. This explains it. But then scientists started to kind of question, and not just creationists, but secular science, some of the points of this Lucy creature, and suggested that, well, maybe this wasn't a creature that was an evolving human. Maybe there were some problems with that. So here are some of the problems. I think one of your questions on your assignment is list 3 of the problems with Lucy. You can just kind of word it differently. You don't have to write out every single word. Just choose one and kind of summarize it. Okay, so one of the problems was that the bone that was claimed to be Lucy's kneecap was found 3 kilometers, which is almost 2 miles away from where the rest of the bones were found, and it was 60 to 70 feet deeper in the strata, which would be the rock that it was found in. So it really wasn't close to all the other bones. So they discovered footprints in the area, but the footprints were quadrupedal apes. They weren't bipedal. It wasn't like 2 footprints side by side. Another problem with it, archaeological finds around in that area, other finds, other discoveries, show evidence of bones that are not like on the human pathway as they saw it with Lucy. So they don't really match up. The evidence in the area didn't really match up. So evolutionists believe that apes had developed larger craniums. So my skull is bigger to encase a larger brain. And they believe that as apes evolve, their brains become bigger. They have a higher capacity for intelligence. And this is what enables them to come out of the trees, walk upright, use tools, and become more self-sufficient, like kind of more as a human, I guess would be a decent way to say it. But when you look at the cranium of Lucy, like her skull is small. So it doesn't match up with it. Okay, to come out of the tree, the brains need to develop, cranium's going to be bigger. Well, Lucy had a smaller cranium. Okay, so it was also believed that these larger skulls, and I just told you that, the larger skulls and brains gave them the mental capacity to walk upright and develop and use tools. But there weren't any tools found in the area. So it would be reasonable that, you know, when a society is discovered and they unearth, you know, a lost city, you're going to find tools, equipment, things that they used in everyday life, but nothing like that was found. The pelvic bones are really important in comparing apes and humans because they're different. Well, these pelvic bones were shattered into lots and lots and lots of pieces. So the Johansson guy who assembled it, he kind of used some creative licensing and putting them together in the way that he wanted them to be put together. So he interpreted it the way he wanted it to be. So there was some question there. So one of the problems, like there's a picture here of an ape, a quadrupedal ape walking on 4 legs. You can see the difference in the hips. So the pelvic bones in comparison are really important because of the angle of the hips of the pelvic girdle between a bipedal and a quadrupedal species. You can see that those hip bones are different. Okay, so here's another one. So that's Lucy. So I'm going to tell you about this discovery that they call Piltdown Man. Okay, so it was in an area in England, and it was discovered in a place called Piltdown Village. This was in 1912 by Charles Dawson, not Darwin, Charles Dawson. So he finds these bones, he assembles them, and then he claims that he found a human ancestor that lived 500,000 years ago. So he's like, I found these bones, they're an ancestor to the human. So it was a big discovery. Well, it was discovered that this discovery was a huge hoax. There were a lot of things that they just made up, that they fabricated. You know, you think, well, why would somebody do that? You know, in the scientific community, when you make a big discovery, like you're set, there's going to be monetary gain, there's going to be notoriety. You know, so there are some reasons why someone would benefit from making a big discovery. Okay, so some of the things that they discovered about this Piltdown Man, the men who assembled it used ape bones and human bones. So they had these bones and they assembled them together. It wasn't one species. Another thing, there were scratches on the teeth. So they had filed down and sanded down their teeth, the teeth of this jawbone, and that were in the jawbone, to make it look more human. The other thing, that the bones had been stained to match the materials around that they were found in. So it was just completely made up. So that was Piltdown Man. So now, with no real transition, we're going to hop to this guy named Ernst Haeckel. Ernst Haeckel. This guy is pretty amazing. Okay, so he proposed this law of recapitulation. The law of recapitulation. It's also known as the biogenic law. So here's what that says. It says that the stages of an animal embryo, now remember we're animals, okay, according to evolutionists. We're just highly evolved animals. The stages of an animal embryo undergoes during development are chronological replay of that species' past evolutionary forms. So in the womb, that would theorize that in the womb, I'm basically an ape in the womb, and I develop in the womb through the embryonic development into a human. Whatever species that I have evolved into, before I'm born, I'm going to go through all that evolutionary process in the womb, and I'm going to be born a human, for example. One of his things was, you'll see this picture on the left. I'm going to have this picture again. He theorized that babies in the womb have gills. So I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but so they have gills that they breathe oxygen through. And he had a photo that proved it. And if you can see, I'll go back. The picture at the top, those embryos, it looks like on the bottom, like right underneath their eye, they have gills. So he theorized that the human embryo goes through a stage where it has gills and breathes oxygen through them. And he had this picture that proved it, photographical evidence. So after other scientists looked at these photos and tested and examined, it was discovered that the photos have been falsified. So he for lack of a better term, edited these photos. And it's interesting to know that, like, this photo that you're seeing right here is still in some science books as a possible theory, which is remarkable. So the thing about Haeckel, he's a great example of how what you believe about our origins affects your worldview. Here's how his life kind of went. So the Nazi Party, we know the Nazi Party, the Germans killed all the Jews, killed millions of Jews. They used Haeckel's theories as justification for racism, nationalism. Nationalism is kind of a broad term of follow my government at all costs. So I'm going to, for example, follow Hitler at all costs. My service to country is more important than anything, including human life. And social Darwinism. Social Darwinism is basically survival of the fittest. This Haeckel, he attacked any type of religion, not just Christians, but any type of religion. So his approach to life is there is no religion, there is no spirituality. We're just here, and we evolved. He also held that the evolutionary biology had been definitively proven that races were unequal in intelligence and ability. So he said that because of evolution, we know that races aren't equal. And that their lives also were of unequal value. So right there, you can see how, like, this person's belief about our origins affected his worldview, right? So that's the last thing. What we believe about who created us, where we came from, absolutely shapes our worldview, and it's important to scrutinize things that you hear, things that you read in textbooks. And match that up with, is that what my God creator says? Even, looking at evolution, does that make sense? So that's the point of all of these lessons, is to help you to get a grasp on what do I believe and really, really understand why you believe it. So does anybody have any questions?
I have one question, Coach Price.
You got it.
So I had to print out this paper, so I missed number 1.
Okay. What's the question?
What 2 scientists discovered Lucy, the evolving ape? I'm pretty sure it's like the first slide you did.
Yeah, Johansson and Davis, I think. Hold on. Gray, I'm sorry. Donald Johansson and Tom Gray.
Okay, thank you, Coach Price.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
I also have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I wasn't sure, but I don't know if it's just me, but like on my paper, it's like number 10. There's like a number 10, but it's like no question. I don't know if you meant to
Okay,
put like.
I probably went to number 10 and then said, oh no, I'm done, and forgot to erase it.
Okay.
So don't worry about that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Texas Roadhouse opens Monday, May 11th.
Is that for outdoor seating and some indoor?
It's all indoor seat. It's 25% capacity indoor seating, and then you can still do to-go orders where you just pick it up in the car.
That is outstanding. Well, before I go, I'm going to make a call and make sure I know who's going to be seating me.
Oh yeah, I'll work at 4:30.
I want to make sure it's. Do you work every day?
Not every day, but I work Friday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday.
That's awesome. Good for you. Good for you.